One of the most popular mechanics to do in Rocket League are flip resets. It has tons of uses. Whether you're freestyling or just trying to rank up, it's one of the most important mechanics to learn. So, of course, you're going to want to learn how to do them. Whether you want to flip reset for the first time or to advance into doing multiple flip resets, in this video I'll be teaching you everything. But there's advice in here for each segment that I'm sure everyone will have something to learn from. So make sure to stick around till the end of the video. This is how to do every flip reset in Rocket League. And this is how to do every mechanic in Rocket League. As of this video, I launched a Patreon page exclusively for one-to-one coaching and informational content. There's a bunch of different tiers with many different benefits, but the lowest tier only costs $5, which enables you to watch all the informational videos with new videos uploaded every single month. As you can see, there's already content up there now, so go check it out. You need to be quick though, because some of the tiers have a limited amount of people that can join, meaning if you wait too long, some of the tiers might be completely filled up. I'm truly excited about this, and I'm very confident that you guys will love it. So go ahead and check out the Patreon if you want more informational content, just like this video, and if you want to support me as a creator. Single flip reset.
Squidgy pounces to himself. He gets
it. You might have seen this in an RCS match or even in your own match, and it can be very effective. I want to preface just really quick that although these mechanics may seem easy to me, they are quite difficult to learn at first. But people can see progress even within a few minutes to a few hours of practice with the right advice. So, how do you do a single flip reset? Let's break it down to easy steps to follow, as this helps the most. Step 1. The approach and what the setup looks like. Make sure to keep the same speed as the ball, don't move away from it, and keep it on the right line in your approach. Speaking of, it's very important to make sure your approach is in a set line, meaning you repeat the exact same approach each time. For example, this. You take a slightly angled approach towards the middle boost pad. Too many times people make the mistake of attempting a flip reset with a completely different setup each time. This doesn't allow you to build muscle memory and repetition of the same step. Therefore, it will be much more difficult. So, stick to this setup at least until you're very consistent at doing flip resets. Again, keep the same speed through that approach, hitting the middle of the ball, and it should look like this. Step 2. What to do on the wall and where to jump off. If you've done the first step correctly, once you get to the wall, you should be lined up like this, very lightly angled. It's important to make sure the tip of your car doesn't directly line up with the ceiling. Yes, it should still face upwards of course, but now it's important to know where you initially jump off from the wall. Before that, there's a super important step so many players and even other creators that do tutorials miss completely. That step is making sure you hit the brakes just a little bit before jumping. Why? Because you want to create a bit of distance between your car and the ball on that approach to getting a flip reset. I'll explain more of that in detail just a little later. Now, knowing where to jump off the wall, well, it's actually pretty easy once you know it. A good line I like to follow and what I teach is this. You should jump off at about the end of this banner, but definitely not earlier than that. Step 3. The approach to the ball in the air. Now we've learned how to approach the initial setup, know how to practice it, and what to do on the wall. So now it's time to put all that together and work on how to actually get the flip reset. As I mentioned previously, right before you jump off the wall, you should hit the brakes just a little bit. Not too much that you stop all your speed, but just enough to create a little bit of distance between the car and the ball. The reason for this is because you need some speed as you hit the ball with the underside of your car, but most importantly, the ball can't be dropping down already. If the ball is already falling, often you won't even get the flip reset, and even if you do, your car almost gets kicked downwards. This is something countless of people have told me they struggle with. They say despite the tutorials they watched, their flip resets aren't good, and this is a big reason why. This step is important and nobody talks about it, so remember that. Now as you've jumped off the wall, you want to boost a little bit and then align your car with the underside of the ball. This might require a little bit of air roll use, so if you're not comfortable with air rolling, don't worry. With the exact right setup, you can use a tiny bit of air roll by just tapping it a little bit. If that's also a bit much for you, I'd recommend practicing this step a bit more as it will be important in order to be consistent. However, occasionally you'll have a setup where you don't need to air roll at all, but the flip reset won't be very effective or good. So it's important to make sure that you learn a little bit of aero usage before attempting a flip reset. Once you've aligned your car properly, you want to boost upwards and at the same time move your car slightly down so the underside of your car is looking upwards towards the ceiling, as well as the ball. This is because all 4 of your wheels need to hit the ball at the same time, so that's why making sure your car is aligned properly with the ball is so important. If you've done every step correctly, once you connect with the ball, you should be able to stay with it by boosting a little bit. If you keep ending up getting kicked downwards by the ball, stop for a second and replay these steps as you might have forgotten something. For example, putting distance between your car and the ball, but some others might be hesitating and going a little bit too slow into getting the reset, so remember that. Step 4. What to do with the flip reset. Let's assume everything is gone correctly. The next step is surprisingly tricky as I get asked by a lot of people, after I get the flip reset, what should I do next? How do I convert this reset into a goal? In practice, you can really just mess around and see what you enjoy doing. However, if you're just starting off learning flip resets and want to score in a game with them, here's what you can do. Once you've gotten the flip reset, stay with the ball by boosting a little bit into it, then stop boosting to delay just a little bit, and then boost again and simply front flip or diagonally front flip into it. Now this is effective because people might think you didn't get the flip reset or ran out of boost because of that slight delay. It's super effective, so go try it out. Make sure to stick around for the rest of the video as I'm sure you can learn a few things that will be helpful for you even if you're just working on single resets for now. Multiple flip resets. You've seen freestylers do them, you've seen RCS players do them, and you might even see this mechanic in game. And now I'll teach you how to do them, or if you already know how to, then how to do it better or do more resets. This segment will be cut into parts, the stall resets and the no stall resets, so you can choose which looks better to you. First, I'll teach you the no stall resets. Again, we'll break down the steps so it's easier to follow. Step 1, the setup. If you've watched the single flip reset part of the video, you'll know how incredibly important the setup is. It's even more important for multiple resets, so go back and watch if you'd like. However, I'll give you a basic rundown as to not repeat myself too much. Go towards the middle boost at a slight angle and always repeat this line whilst practicing. At the same time, keep the same speed as the ball. When you get to the wall, before jumping off, you should lightly tap the brakes a bit to create a distance between your car and the ball. This is important for any reset that you do, except maybe stall resets. Step 2, the wall. Make sure to jump off at around the end of this spanner, but not earlier than that. I need to preface that in order to do these multiple flip resets, generally speaking, you need to have decent control over your aero, as it is a pretty integral part, especially directional aero. Step 3, getting the first reset. Now, once you've jumped off the wall, make sure to immediately boost upwards towards it, whilst at the same time aeroing and maneuvering your car to face the underside of the ball. I'd highly recommend using directional aero like aero left or aero right, as it allows you to do these movements quicker and smoother. Personally, I use aero right. Once you've got the flip reset, if you've done the steps correctly, you shouldn't be pushed downwards, you should be able to stay with the ball even with just a little boost. Step 4. Now the trickiest part, how to get those multiple resets. I find that teaching people what not to do helps people as well, so I'll also be showing examples of the wrong ways to approach a multiple flip reset. The biggest downfall people have in this step is usually that they try to front flip or side flip into the ball. This is what I used to do when I first started learning too, but trust me, it's not the right way and can even hinder your progress. Instead, you need to learn diagonal front flip cancelling. Now, it sounds hard and is a little tricky, but once I explain, you'll understand much better on what to do. You might ask why this is the right way, and there's a few reasons, like the fact that it's flexible, meaning it's easier to adapt mid-air with your flip. It's also important because if you simply side flip, you often just get pushed off the ball. You'd also not be able to hit the underside of the ball properly, which is equally as important. Enough of the whys though, let's get into how to do it. Now, a key mistake other videos get wrong on showing people how to do mechanics is actually surprisingly showing people exactly how to move your analog stick, like with a controller overlay. I was surprised too, but I've tested this throughout my coaching and found that it simply makes people hesitate too much, and that explaining it verbally was much more effective than visually. So, this is how I'll do it for now. There's a few key steps in how to do a diagonal front flip cancel. and I'll break it down so you can remember each step as well as possible. Step 1. So, after that first flip reset, what you need to do is make sure your car is looking forwards towards the ball. It should be something like this, but it's okay if it varies. Step 2. The diagonal front flip cancel. Now, to actually do the diagonal front flip cancel, you're going to want to point your left analog stick to what would be 1 o'clock when you first press the jump button, but then immediately push it back towards 8 o'clock after you've pressed jump. This is a bit tricky, so I suggest practicing this in free play without flip resets to get the hang of it at first. You will need to correct yourself to make it as smooth as possible with directional arrow. So, if you have arrow right like me, the diagonal front flip cancel will be 1 o'clock and then 8 or 7 o'clock. And it's incredibly important to remember that you do not use arrow when you do that initial flip. Arrowing should only be used to correct yourself further after that first flip. So again, don't hold arrow down as you flip when doing multi-resets. Now I don't use arrow left, but I'd assume it just be inverted so that you can correct properly, so 11 o'clock to 5 or 4 o'clock. The variation of the analog stick is purely down to how you're facing the ball with your car, so remember that. Step 3. What to do after the resets. Arguably the most difficult part with multiple resets is knowing how to adapt mid-air to getting a reset. For example, after getting the second or third or fourth reset, you might not be in a fantastic position to convert that reset into a goal or a cool shot. So I have a few tricks for exactly this to help you ensure no matter what kind of multi-reset you get, you can do something with it. If you end up being pushed to the side of the ball, there's not much you can do besides trying to correct and go for a simple shot, which usually ends up being safe. Or, if you're feeling flashy, go for another reset. If you end up too far downwards, a cool thing you can do to adjust is boost upwards and then go for a musty flick. I know it sounds a bit wild and I'm giving complex mechanic suggestions, but these are just ideas if things go wrong. After all, a multi-reset is a complex mechanic too. Another thing that you can do if you're too far downwards is simply correct, go upwards, and try and go for a pinch. Of course, with an ideal multi-reset, you really can do just about anything you want with it. So don't stress, go try it out. Stall resets. There's so many cool things you can do with stall resets, and that's why it's so incredibly popular to learn. You can do helicopter stalls, evample resets, and so much more. There's a few ways to approach a stall reset, some easier than others, but they all have a similar idea in mind. Let's get into it and I'll show you the steps. It's not a complex mechanic, but you can do complex things with the mechanic. Step 1. Preparation for the stall reset. As I prefaced, there's a few ways of making stalling easier than others. For example, you can lower your dead zone so it's easier to stall. However, I don't recommend this for people who aren't full-on freestylers, as it's hard to adapt to in ranked with other mechanics. However, if you're interested, these are good settings from a good stall reset player, so shout out to him. To explain why lowering your controller dead zone can help, it's because there's a small range where you can actually get the stall. The analog stick needs to be in a certain position for it to register. So, having dead zones freestylers use can help you get the stall resets easier by making that stall area, so to speak, bigger. Meaning you can hold the analog stick a little further up to, for example, 10 o'clock. Normally you can only really get stalls if the analog stick is pointed directly to the left or directly to the right. There's also ways to have a custom keybind to make stall resets instant, but I won't be covering that in this video. Step 2. The practice. Knowing how to stall is actually super easy once you know the controls. However, if you want to be consistent at them, it's good to learn how to do stalls first prior to attempting the resets. Otherwise, you might waste a lot of time. It's easy to break down what stalling is, and you'll get a good feeling of what to do with just a little bit of practice. So, repeat these steps. You need to have one directional arrow and the jump button bound. Simply tilt your analog stick to 9 o'clock if you have arrow right like me, or 3 o'clock with arrow left. To begin with, hold that directional arrow in that position I described, press jump, and with a tiny bit of delay between that first jump, you press jump again. Again, it will take time to be consistent at this mechanic, however, you'll get a good understanding of the range of how much you can move your car around and still get a reset. Practice this for a few minutes in free play and then move on to this next step. You can also practice getting instant resets by holding your analog stick to the left if you have arrow right, pressing the jump button, and then pressing the arrow right and jump button at the same time. Simply tap the aerial and jump button and your car will stay in the same spot. If you hold the aerial, then of course your car will keep moving. It will take time to get it faster and more consistent of course, but now you know how to practice it. Step 3. Getting the stall reset. You'll want to practice stall resets with the same setup over and over again to build on your muscle memory. This is how all the pros actually get really good mechanics, and this is how you learn the most effectively. Feel free to make a custom training pack, however, I've always preferred just practicing this in free play myself. Move towards the middle boost at a decent pace whilst keeping the same speed as the ball. Once you reach the wall, you're going to want to jump at the end of the banner along with the ball, not hitting the brakes or anything. It's important to not go too fast, because if you're too fast, you'll simply slam the ball into the ceiling. Once you're on the ceiling though, let your car fall just slightly under the ball by boosting a little bit under it. And then repeat the controls I mentioned. Directional arrow, pulling your analog stick to the left with arrow right, and analog stick to the right with arrow left. Then press the arrow and jump button at about the same time. This is how you get that instant stall reset. However, you can also just do it normally as well by arrowing onto the ball and stalling at the right time. Of course, if you're feeling frisky, you can mess around and practice helicopter stalls or even a Vanpool resets too. As I said, the controls are pretty easy, but it can look overwhelming because of the complex things you can do with this mechanic. All it takes from now on is consistent practice and you're good to go.